Good evening. Good evening, everybody. The Oregon School Board Association, OSBA Board of Directors special meeting for Friday, September 13th, 2024 is called to order at 6:31. Welcome. Please feel free to continue eating, drinking your beverages, and getting the dessert. Few housekeeping items. First of all, I want to welcome our attendees and participants virtually, and I believe we do have two new ex officios. So maybe I will start with roll call, and when Krista and Austin, your moment comes through the roll call, please feel free to take a minute to introduce yourselves for our colleagues here. Welcome, and Linnell, if you could take the roll call.
Craig Albright. Jeff Crapper. Chris Cronin. Jackie Crook. Present. Lori Danzuka. Katrina Dowdy. Present. Neelam Gupta. Present. Linda Hamilton. Chris Howard. Kristen Urban. Greg Kentz. Christy Cockey. Steve Lowell. Sonia McKenzie. Alonso Olivares.
Here.
Chrissy Bates. Here. Clyde Booth.
Here.
Nicole Shaw.
I'm here.
Here. Yes.
Paul's online.
Yes.
Emily Smith. Nancy Thomas. Here. Glenn Wachter.
Here.
Dawn Watson.
Here.
Anna Ali. Krista Penn.
Present.
And Krista, feel free to take a moment to please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Krista Parent, Executive Director for the Coalition of Oregon School Administrators. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but we have competing activities throughout the weekend.
Austin Polnecki.
Here, and can you hear me okay?
You do.
Fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, well, first off, thank you so much. Sorry again, I couldn't be there in person. Yeah, busy people stay busy. And I really appreciate the work that you're all doing. As Oregon Community College Association president, I want to say that I look forward to not only a year and a legislative session of collaboration, but also working hard together for not only our K through 12 partners, but also for our community college partnership. Thank you so much, everyone.
Sammy Dudley.
Present.
There are 19 present.
19 present. That's phenomenal. Again, thank you all for being here, taking time away from your obligations. And really, I hope that we will find this weekend a time to reflect, to plan, to make decisions, and to connect, to build community, to get to know each other better, and hopefully to continue the good work that we all do. So at the beginning, before we get started with the work, I want to share with you a few logistical things, and also share with you a few thoughts that were in my mind, and also have the itinerary or the plan for the day, the plan for the weekend, so you have a visual of what we're about to do. So let's get started with our biological needs. There is bathrooms down the hall if you take the exit and then the doors at the exit and then you take the left. The bathrooms should be clearly marked there. Correct. Another important need, coffee. So thank you, staff, for bringing the coffee. And I know some of you say it's too late, but here's the thing. In the Middle East, we drink the Arabic coffee until 10 p.m. and we can sleep just okay 10:30. If you can't do that, I really want you to give it a try tomorrow morning if you can. It's beautiful. And once one person pours it, the whole room just reminds me of home. So you're gonna have me pouring it sometime, not just to stay awake and alert, but really to smell that cardamom smell and remind me of home, community, and being with family members. I really look forward to that. So the coffee, the Arabic coffee is small packets. Since it's a metric system, they say 100 milliliters, which is, according to my calculation, half liquid cup of hot water, and you pour the powder, you stir it, and that's it. The instructions are in Arabic, in metric system, so I have to say that. You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, staff. Thanks, Teresa. So before we begin tonight, I want to share something that's been on my mind as I've been driving here. I flew back from work from East Coast, and I stopped by the Portland Japanese Garden. Have you ever been there? Raise your hand if you've been there. If you haven't, I see a really good number of people. If you haven't, plan for a stop there before or after the convention. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And while I was recharging and reflecting, I was reflecting on something really unique there. There's this ancient style of stone masonry called ishigaki. And those stones are carefully placed without a mortar. It's phenomenal. And they have stood the test of time. Traditionally, this style stands the test of time for centuries in Japan. And they're carefully placed without any mortar. And that really reminded me of the work of Tumani. It reminded me of this process that we do. Each resolution, each vote we make, each discussion we have, and sometimes every single word we say is like a brick in the wall or in the castle that we build for our children, for this institution. And the way that we shape those bricks, build this stone wall or this house that really protects our kids, serve our kids. So I want us to really reflect on that. And it's just really phenomenal to see the stones, how they are. They don't shape them, they just plan them really accordingly in a way that's very, very brilliant. And to build something lasting and strong, it takes that reflection. But before we go further, I want to do something fun. By raise of hands, if you know the answer, raise your hand. And President-elect and immediate past presidents, you're not allowed to answer because you heard my speech like 20,000 times. I'm practicing it. But for those, the others, ask you a question, raise your hand if you can remember. Last year during the convention on the stage, I called our schools something. What did I call our schools during my speech last year in November? And staff included, you can answer. And if you answer, there is a gift here from the Japanese Garden, which is a bookmark with the Great Wave. So if you want to remember which page you're at, you're going to get that. And for those who are worried about ethics concerns, this is less than $50. So you're okay. So what did I call the schools last year? No. You know the answer, raise your hand. Yes. Not superheroes. We're all superheroes. All right, we're gonna do it in the wait, don't tell me style on NPR. It's A, playgrounds of knowledge, because all of us like to learn while we're having fun, or B, the challenge course of learning, because learning is challenging until we make it fun, or C, castles of hope?
C.
All right, who said C first? Where was the first C? Katrina, all right, you take it. Remind me to give it to you. So, castles of hope. So, whether it's the castles of hope or the stone walls in Dutch Japanese garden that are staying for years and years and decades, just think about it. The resolutions and the decisions and the policies and the investments we make are like those bricks that are going to impact the kid, the school district, not only in this grade or in this fiscal year or in this biennium, probably for the rest of their lives, and probably some cascading effects to the generations behind them. So that's right, castles of hope. Just like those castles provide refuge, our schools offer children a place of hope, learning, and growth. But just like building a strong castle or a stone wall, we need to consider tonight, how are we going to shape those countless of hours of work that are in front of us, the deliberation, the committee preparation, staff input, feedback from membership. All of that is coming to us today in some highlights, some resolutions, some decisions over this weekend, so we can make the best out of those bricks to build something beautiful and lasting. So these decisions aren't something that we make quickly. They are key pieces in building something lasting. Our students, our communities depend on it. And the thoughtful work of considering how each one fits into the broader vision for the future is what ensures their impact for years to come. So as we come together, I want you to reflect on that. And maybe while we're discussing those decisions, let's think about this big picture, this castle that we're building together for our kids to give them the hope. So let's begin. And let's see what's the run of the show. Emily, would you like to give us a run of the show for tonight and for the weekend?
Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome, everybody. We're really excited to have you here at the beautiful Oregon coast. This is something that we've been looking forward to and planning for a while, and just really excited to have us all in the same space. We've heard a lot this year about people wanting time to build community, to get to know one another, and to be in person. So I'm really looking forward to the next few days. Before I go into the logistics, I did just want to take a minute. We have some new staff in the room that'll be supporting our works moving forward. And so just wanted to give you all a moment to introduce yourself so that everybody knows who's here with us. Jamie, do you want to start? Do you all have a microphone? And that's a reminder, please make sure you use a microphone when you speak so folks online can hear. Can you hear me? Oh, yes.
Jamie, Director of Finance and Member Services.
And I've been to a few of these before, but Michael Miller, Interim Director of Legal Services. It's on.
So this is my first meeting, but a lot of you know me already. Jake Arnold, Communications Team.
The rest of you can introduce yourselves too, just so people can put names to faces.
I'm Kristen Miles. I'm the Director of Board Development.
Spencer Lewis, Director of Policy Services.
And Sharice the Guy, I'm the event specialist.
And now Tristan, the Executive Assistant.
Good evening, everyone. Dave Harvey. I'm the Director of PACE Administration.
All right, thank you, everyone. Dave is also serving as our IT tech this evening because we also have lives outside of this. And Henry's wife is graduating, and so we want to give him an opportunity. He'll be here tomorrow, so tell him congratulations. But so I just wanted to really quickly give us a sense of what we'll expect this weekend. We are starting tomorrow morning. Tonight we'll get done around 8:30 or 9, and then we will start back in here. All of our meetings and meals will be in this room. Breakfast is a buffet. It'll start from 8 to 9 with the meeting starting at 9 o'clock. We'll go through until lunch and then have lunch in here again, and then have just some free time. So we heard through our surveys, through lots of conversations with you all, that people wanted time to get to know one another and connect. We looked at doing some sort of group activity. It's hard to find something that works for everyone. And so we just listed a few options. You can walk to the beach from here if you want to go for a walk, grab some people that you haven't spoken to before, get to know. Being out in nature is a really good way to sort of break the ice and just naturally get to know one another. The other thing is we'll have yard games down here if that's your thing and you're competitive and want to join in on that. There'll be a bunch of games happening down there. But the biggest, most important thing is to be able to, tomorrow morning's agenda is heavy. There's a lot to talk about. I know there's a lot of good discourse that we will have about the agenda topics and the resolutions that are coming up. And so I wanted to have a little bit of free time for everybody. And then we'll come back for dinner together. And then after dinner, we're doing s'mores on the patio where you can feel free to invite your whole family to come for just a more group social gathering time. And then Sunday morning, we've engaged with Salam Norrigan to come back and do some of our visioning and goal setting work that I've been working with him to get going. And so giving us the opportunity to review our vision and mission and make sure that that is something that we all feel really confident about and feel like that is heading us in the right direction. And then we'll spend most of our time reviewing our current goals and deciding as a group whether or not they need to be revised. If that still fits with this group, this is a different makeup than the group that originally approved our goals last. And so just giving us some opportunity to dive into the work, determine our path forward and start that process. So that will be on Sunday. And then we'll hopefully wrap up by noon. You'll get a bunch of box lunch and be able to head home. So, all right, thanks, Sammy.
Thank you. So with that, let's get started with approving the agenda. The president entertains a motion. And as a reminder, please raise your flyer or the tent if you would like to be recognized. Emily?
Emily Smith, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, and thank you for stating your name. So now can track and also our attendees and participants can. Is there a second?
Clyde Root, I second you. Second.
Thank you. It's been seconded. And by the way, second, you don't need to wait for me. Just grab the microphone and say second. Say your name and say second. That's totally okay for a second. Is there any debates on the motion? See, there's no debates. Is there any objection on the motion to approve the agenda as presented? See, there's no objection. The motion passes. Then the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Just want to say overall, whether it's the consent agenda or other items, we have a really packed agenda and every item is critical. So we're going to allocate time for the consent agenda. Right now we have allocated about 2.5 minutes if needed, and we need to extend time. We will if there is a specific question that you would like. So before we start with the consent agenda, is there a motion or is there any questions? Is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
This is Katrina. I second.
Been moved by the president-elect Cronin and second by Director Dowdy to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? See, there is no discussion. We're going to enter into votes by unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Seeing there is no objection, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the 2025 OSBA Board of Directors calendar of events. Informational, and our speaker is Emily Nishik. We have 10 minutes allocated for this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in your packet, you have the proposed calendar of events for 2025. And this includes our board meetings, our LPC meetings, and some other committee meetings that we already know the dates set for the Finance Committee meeting. I wanted to open it up for a little bit of a discussion around what works best for this group in terms of meeting times. Specifically for the January meeting, we have the opportunity we'll be doing a new member orientation for the new board members who will be sworn in January. And Past board members are more than welcome to come to that as well, but we were trying to determine if it makes more sense for folks to take a little bit of the work time on Friday and start earlier. If you want to come to the orientation part of the meeting, and then we would start the business meeting that evening and then go into the legislative policy committee meeting on Saturday, getting folks out earlier for their weekend. Or if the preference is to start at 5 o'clock and get out at the end of the day on Saturday. So I've heard and had conversations with some folks who feel like they like taking more time during the week and less time on their weekends. And then I know it's also hard for some people who have a harder time stepping away from work. We will, make the final decision on this, but I did just kind of want to get your feedback on how you're feeling in general for that January meeting, and then also for the March meeting and the June meeting will both be virtual. And those are options where we could do them during the week instead of the weekends. So we would essentially look at where there would be competing board meetings for your local board and choose dates that didn't conflict. Linnell went on and found a couple of dates that didn't conflict where it could be on a Monday night or a Friday night rather than on the weekend. And so just wanted to offer that. It would be changed and different. And so I didn't want to just make the decision without bringing it to you all. But if that is something that you would prefer, and then it frees up a couple more of your weekends. Yeah, Katrina?
I would love, and obviously they're not here yet, so we don't know, but the pattern that I've seen is more and more of the folks that are new board members are folks that are also working. And that hasn't always historically been the makeup of OSBA. And so I think that we would probably have a higher likelihood of new board members being able to attend and meaningfully attend if it was taking up as little of the work, the 9 to 5 workday as possible.
Other thoughts? Yeah, Don?
On the June meeting, it's usually on Father's Day weekend, and I usually am not around. And so I would appreciate it to not be on Father's Day weekend because my husband already gives me so much grace on coming to all these, and that's his weekend. He wants me to spend with him.
The June one is really challenging, and that's one that we probably will try and find a work day in the evening. Probably it could still start at 5, but with graduations and, that you all attend, that you look forward to, that you work really hard for that moment. It's really hard on that June, and then the last weekend, everybody's kind of out of town, and then we don't have any time to approve our budget if we have issues there. So that one, we probably will try and find a time that is during the week. On weekdays. Any other preferences, strong opinions? All right, we will go through and finish this up, and then you'll approve it or it'll be in the consent agenda of the January or November meeting.
Roadshow.
Next up on the agenda is the Legislative Roadshow. We have the dates and schedule are in front of you in your packet. And we will be traveling out in teams of 2. So we've split it up where Haley and either Efren or Adrian, our new legislative policy specialist, will be either with me or with Haley, and we'll be traveling to 21 sites across the state. And you are, as a reminder, you are welcome to travel within your region and come and support us at those meetings. You can submit for your expenses in your regional travel. And I would highly encourage you to do so. I think this is a new team going out on the road this year. And so I think having the local support from your region would be really helpful, especially when we're considering the resolutions that we have coming forward, and having support of the board on those, I think would be very beneficial in the community, and just being able for you to get out and meet your region and the other boards within your region is something that I think is just a great opportunity to be able to really hear. Our goal for this coming legislative roadshow is to set the stage for the legislative session. So looking forward on our 3 priorities, which is funding, accountability, and chronic absenteeism, and to listen and get a lot of input and feedback And so we'll also be talking about the OSBA business and any resolutions and sharing that, but we really what we've heard is folks want time to talk amongst themselves and to be able to share input and feedback to us as OSBA. And so we're definitely going to build in quite a bit of time for that on these roadshows to be able to learn from the communities where we are. The other piece of that is really looking at, for us, finding commonality in the different communities that we're visiting. So focusing on where do we have similar challenges, where do we have similar successes, and then at the end of the roadshow, really sharing that back out to our membership and being able to build those connections where folks in Eastern Oregon might realize that they are having a very similar challenge to a busing situation in Portland or Salem. And so really trying to connect on the areas where there's common issues across the state. So that will be kind of the focus for this year's.
Questions, Bradley? Feedback? So really encourage you to attend those regionals and also maybe check in with your LPC person or multi-director districts persons to see if they're coming. It's a really great opportunity to listen from the members and share what's going on and really have that feedback come up back into the board. So with that, the next item is annual convention. And we have 10 minutes for discussion on it. And that's for Kristen Miles. Kristen?
I have to be smarter than the microphone. Thank you, Mr. President. So very excited to bring you a really great convention this year. Our theme this year is All In for Students. And just to run you through what you can expect, on Thursday, November 7th, we'll have our pre-conference, and that will cover the Leadership Institute Gold level. So as you may be familiar with, we've done this the last few conferences. In our pre-conference, you can earn the entire medal for that level. So in Summer Board, we did the entire medal level for silver. And so we're going to do gold for the pre-conference at annual convention. So we'll have workshops on organizational culture and climate, using data for student success, culturally responsive practices in governance, and innovative practices and systems thinking. Our admin professionals pre-conference is also that day, and that will include managing disruptive meetings, agenda planning, online presence, and board admin pro partnerships. And that day is also the Council of School Attorneys. On Friday, November 8th, that's our big first day of the conference or convention, and our general session will include the board president and executive director opening remarks. We're going to have a land acknowledgement that day. There has been a land acknowledgement committee that's been working with on that, and that committee has reached out, has done some really phenomenal deep work on that, and has reached out to community partners for input, and that has gone through the equity committee as well, so you can expect that. We will also have a hot topics table on the process that we went through to come up with that. We will have board introductions as usual. The board will meet in the front of the general session ballroom at 8 o'clock after breakfast concludes. And so the doors will open at 8:15. We ask you to come early. We know that's some long sitting and waiting time, but it's really important for staff to get you there on time so that you're all ready to go when we call your name and you come up. And Janet Avila Medina is very on the spot. She will be calling and texting if you're not there. And if you're familiar with that, you know. We'll be having student performance during general session, and then keynote. Brandon Fleming will be talking about building bridges through education policy and empathetic communication. And if you recognize that name, Brandon was last with us in 2022 and got great reviews. So we're very excited to have him back. The lunch program will include a student panel this year, teacher of the year, and superintendent of the year. And then of course, we will have workshops as usual. And that is the evening of the president's reception as well. So then Saturday, general session will include our president-elect speech, student performance again, and Capitol Watch. So instead of having Capitol Watch as a breakfast, our big legislative session is coming up and we want everybody to hear those updates instead of having to choose that as a breakfast. So we'll be having that at general session. Our lunch program keynote, Eric Scheninger works with schools globally, and he's the founder and CEO of Aspire Change EDU. He will give a talk on preparing learners for the future and AI in schools. We'll have workshops, again, all day as usual. Then we'll have the OSBA membership meeting and hot topics to close out convention, and then the LPC meetings that night. So for caucus meetings, so you know, the rural caucus will meet from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Friday. The color caucus will meet from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. on Friday, and the LGBTQIA2S+ advisory committee will meet from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. on Saturday. So just a couple of extra notes. That's our program. Couple of extra notes. We are asking you, as usual, to be presiders at all of our workshops. And if you're not sure what a presider does, I'm here all weekend. Come and ask me. I can tell you what a presider does. I have a sign-up sheet that I'll have all weekend, so you can sign up for the workshop you want. You got a preview of what that looks like in your packet, but you'll sign up with me directly. So come find me. I'll ask you to, if you're presenting at a workshop, please make sure that you don't sign up for something that is the same time as the workshop you're presenting. There will be no head table across the stage this year. Our VIPs will be sitting in rounds near the front of the stage, so there won't be a table across the stage. If you're interested in Leadership Institute changes, because board development is revamping the Leadership Institute program, please come see me. There's flyers about it in the back. But I am more than happy to walk you through what those changes are, how they are aligned with research-based programming, and happy to talk about that. You can ask me questions. If your districts are interested in submitting proposals for the student showcase and student performance opportunities, we would greatly appreciate it. There's a link to apply on the website, and I believe there's also a flyer in your packet about that. Our board members love seeing students and hearing from students. So if you've got exciting things going on in your district, we'd love to showcase that. Registration is moving right upstairs next to the main hotel check-in, so you no longer will have to go downstairs to register. You'll get to do that right at the front entry of the main hotel entry. The room block link was sent to the board and your local district administrative professional on September 3rd. So please make sure that you've got an overnight room secured on Saturday, because the board meeting is on Sunday. And then registration for everyone will open on September 17th at 9 a.m. If you're an officer, Linnell has already taken care of your registration and your overnight room reservations, and the rest of the board needs to register on the 17th. That was a lot of information. Hopefully you feel really informed and prepared about AC, but if you've got any questions throughout the weekend, please come see me. We're super excited to bring you a great event. So thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Kristen. Kristen and her team, frankly, the whole organization under the leadership of the development team, you do a phenomenal job making the conference and convention a place of learning and community and connection. Lots of friendships across the state started and strengthened through those opportunities. So really, thank you for all what you do.
Team effort, thank you.
Yes, and on that note, any questions for the team? Questions, feedback? All right, put it on your calendar. It's the second weekend, Veterans Day weekend, and we have a question from Katrina.
One quick question that my admin asked that I asked, and it's okay if it needs to be offline. If we are presenting, is our board still needing to pay for that day?
Yes. If you are just well, we can check.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, the next item on the agenda is the executive director update. Before I hand the microphone to you, Emily, I want to say thank you for including the memorandum and the reports. I really enjoyed reading it and seeing the progress that you have done and your team have done in each one of those goals. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to you to share your report.
Thank you, Sam. So when we did the executive, at the time interim executive director evaluation process, and I waived that for last year, one of the commitments that I made was to include a written report in it for every single regularly scheduled meeting that ties back to my goals as the executive director. So that's what you have in your packet. And really looking at goal number 1 is the financial operating plan and the financial stability of the organization. We'll be spending a lot of time talking about that tomorrow, but we have spent the last year looking and developing that plan based on feedback. It not only includes where do we have opportunity to increase revenue, but also looking at where we can save costs for the organization as well. So it is definitely balancing the two and looking at how we are structured and how we operate as an organization to ensure that we are not only meeting the needs of the members, but we're doing it in a cost-effective way. So we will continue to do that in the coming year. And we'll have a full discussion about the revenue side of that tomorrow. For goal number 2, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and operationalizing that within the organization. This was really came from the board originally, when the board put together their commitment to equity and said, we want to lead with equity and for equitable education in the state and be able to be an example. And so the board did a lot of work in training, and during that same time, the staff also did. And we engaged with an organization called the Center for Equity and Inclusion, and we've been continuing to do that work this year. So we, our leadership team has been meeting with the facilitators from the Center for Equity and Inclusion that did the 4 training sessions with our all staff last spring. And now they've been meeting directly with the leadership team, really focused on moving towards culturally responsive supervision for the organization, and spending a lot of time just sort of getting to know one another as a new lead team. We have quite a few new folks, and it's a new makeup for the team. So we just met last week. We spent a lot of time talking about what do we want our culture to be as leaders within this organization? How do we want to show up for our team? How do we want to interact with one another? And really trying to build relationships and that inclusion piece within the work. And so that's something that we will continue. Part of this is also being driven by our equity committee within the organization. So it is made up of staff at all levels of the organization. It's being co-led. They chose leaders within their team, and it's being co-led by 2 really passionate team members, and they are helping keep us on track and driving the work. And that group is meeting once a month. And Haley and I are also a part of that, because I believe firmly that you have to have leadership from the top to be able to have that sort of systemic change within the organization when you're doing culture work. And it can't be left up to just the staff to do that. So that's something that we continue to do, and they're putting together a proposal to us to be able to continue the all staff training with the Center for Equity and Inclusion. And something that I really like about that is those 2 facilitators know us well now. They've seen the change within the organization, and they've been able to kind of help guide us and show us where we need to be stronger and really focus our work. So that's something that we will continue to do. The next goal is around school funding and advocacy. So we have been heavily involved in the funding conversations that have been going on before the session. I've talked a lot about it around the current service level and the starting point that we have, where we all know it's not what schools need, but it is a better starting point, which means that we don't have to spend the first half of session fighting about the base number, and really focus on where do we have opportunity to put in very specific requests to be able to increase the funding where we have a strong case to do so. And so that is something that we will continue to do. I meet with Dr. Williams monthly, and that has just been a really helpful conversation where she can flag stuff for us. We can flag things for her that are happening and have kind of an off the record conversation that has been really helpful for Efren, Adrian, and I to be able to continue to do that. We're also working with the governor's office. They are fully staffed now with their policy advisory team. And so we're hoping to have regular meetings with that team as well going into the session. And then we continue to build partnerships with COSA, with OEA, OSEA, and the main funding partners to be able to figure out where we have priorities that are aligned that we can all go in together. A lot of that is around funding, and some of it is around policy and trying to fix some of the policy that happened in the last long session. Haley's been involved in those conversations as well in areas where we can fix some bills that pass that are we have the data to show how much they cost, how challenging they were to implement, and to be able to go back and get some of those fixes. So that will be our focus this coming session. And then for the leadership piece of it, it's really been my goal really since I came on as the deputy of trying to increase transparency for the organization internally. And so being able, it was something I sat down with all the staff in my first couple of months and I heard like, we don't know how decisions are made, or we don't know, the process for things. And so really trying to just open up communication lines, make myself available. Haley's done an excellent job of communicating out to the team whenever decisions are made or whenever we have the conversation, and also inviting people to the conversation. So that's something that we will continue to do and build upon and encourage all of our leaders within the organization to do. And then last is board leadership, and really remain focused on supporting this board through a really challenging year. It has been a really, really hard year, and you are all still here. And I appreciate each one of you for being here and sticking with us as we figure out how we want to move forward. And I really mean that, figuring out how do we as a collective group want to show up for kids in Oregon. And so that is something that I will continue to do, and I will continue to be here to support you in it. But just really looking forward to that next chapter. So thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Emily. We really appreciate this summary. And as you share these goals right now, I can see how each one connects with the other and how these pillars are connecting with each other. When was the last time the CSL conversation got the momentum where we are right now? It's a rhetorical question because I don't remember the last time there was any conversation where the governor, the legislature, and the education community are agreeing that we have a problem and let's fix it before session starts. And this is phenomenal. It takes really the leadership of Emily, her team, and us as a board and advocates, alongside with our partners. Some of them are here and with us in the meeting, that we need to show up and really emphasize the importance of this session. So with that, I'll pause. Any questions or comments or feedback for Emily? It's really important for us as Emily's bosses that we share feedback, support, questions, oversights. Please go ahead.
I just have one quick question. With the governor's office and wanting us all to be in alignment and collaborate as much as possible, knowing that we're not starting behind the $8 starting point, or whatever you want to say, this year as far as CSL, are we making sure that OAESD is right in lockstep with us so that we are really encouraging and including our ESD partners in all of these discussions?
It is something that we have been talking about opening it up. So we've been meeting as the 4 partners. Lori Sattenspiel is still consulting with us and supporting Efren and Adrian. And she is also consulting with them. So I would say they probably have more access to the table than before through Lori and that connection. And it's actually really helpful to be able to hear what is happening at the ESD level and how we can support each other. So I would say, yes, we are looking. That is a goal of mine, is looking to open up the table and see who isn't here as a partner, who might have values that are aligned with our work, that have a whole other powerful constituent group that we haven't necessarily harnessed our power. We're doing a lot with the PTA and supporting them. Parents have an incredible amount of power to be able to speak to the impact of education in their communities, and especially around funding. So how are we connecting with those other groups? And so that's definitely something that Efren and Adrian and I are continuing to do. Krista, did you have something you want to add?
I was just going to say, we have all the ESD superintendents very involved in those discussions and in partnership with us as well on that topic.
Nancy?
It's good to hear this conversation. I know from my day life that from what I hear, this is what I understand. I am not a long time resident of Oregon, but when there is focus on education, then human services tends to get pulled back, and we understand that is about to happen. So it was interesting. So when I got the news that that human services is potentially looking at a 15% cut. For the upcoming biennium, I thought, oh, then maybe this means they're really gonna get serious about education and that CSL and really talking about it. Although, having said all of that, I want to make sure that we don't forget that many of the districts, including my own, are still behind. Because the CSL has never been what it should have been, we continue to be behind, and every time we get to CSL, it puts us further and further behind. We are now looking at the same issues as well, and I just want to make sure that we understand that this is great news. I am so thankful that we're looking at it and we're talking about it ahead of the legislative session, but the work is not over because districts are still going to be under significant pressure. Significant pressure.
Absolutely, and the work isn't over because it has to go through the legislature, and the legislature has a ton of priorities, and there's education and transportation is the other huge one that we're hearing a lot, that this is going to be their year, and that is a huge, huge amount of funding that will go towards that. And so while we're excited that we're at a different starting point, the work is in no way over, even to get to the current service level that was recommended. I will say the difference is we got invited to the table, and we got invited to the table early to fix some of those changes that will start to help build it back up, because it's not a one-time fix. It's saying we actually calculated this wrong and we need to calculate it correctly moving forward. So it will hopefully eventually start to build, but I absolutely agree. We are nowhere near done.
So Emily, maybe a high level on each one of those goals, legislative and the others, if you can share, how does this board, whether during our meetings or in between our meetings in our individual capacities, can support you achieve or further progress on each one of those goals?
Yeah, so I think for the legislative one, we've spent a lot of time with the legislative policy committee, and that's really the place to engage on that side of the work. Fill out the survey that Adrienne sent out where she's trying to figure out who it has knowledge of different specific areas within education or within PACE, which is a whole other group of legislative bills that we also track and try and have influence over. And so that is something that's newer for us, to be able to directly reach out to board members and say, you said you wanted to speak on this topic, there's a bill coming, are you ready, and can you engage in that? So we're definitely looking at engaging our membership, our board members, and our LPC more in the upcoming session, and building the other piece of that you can be doing now that Efren's talked a lot about is just getting to know your legislators in your community, so that when you go for the ask, you already have a relationship. They already know who you are. You might have had coffee with them, or you showed up to a town hall. So the first time that you're showing up, you're not asking for something, but you have already started to build that relationship. And that's really important when there's so many priorities that folks are going to be coming to them for. So I would say that is probably the biggest place to engage. I think that the other one is really around that partnership of the executive director and the board and leading the organization and being that example, not just for other school boards in the state, but for our staff and for us to be able to stand strong in the community and be that leader. I think it is really figuring out how we want to operate as an organization and as a board. And that is one area where I feel like this group has a lot of influence and ability to make change there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. And with that, we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is the policy committee updates. We have Spencer and Chris. I believe, Chris, you would like to defer to Spencer, or are you co-presenting? Here.
I definitely am going to defer to Spencer, but I'm going to just start out. Because I just wanted to thank the members of the policy committee, Don Watson, Chris Howard, who's not here. We have a small committee. One of the issues that you'll be talking about is language around the numbers on the committee, and we'll be talking about that later. But we've been very hardworking. I want you to know that. We've met many times. We've had really rigorous discussions, and I really appreciate the hard work that the committee has put in. Sammy and I'm the president. Sammy is also on the committee as president. I'm the president of the policy committee. He's the president of OSBA. But yeah, let's not rush things. But I just want to say also thank you to Spencer and Colleen for pulling us together. I want you to know we've undertaken a complete policy review this year, so we've been working very hard. We're not through. We have meetings scheduled up through the end of the year, and we're gonna get her done. We're gonna do all of the work. We have a couple policies for you to discuss tonight, but this is just part of it. You've already approved some. But Spencer has written a wonderful memo. I'm going to have him just sort of start us off. So thank you.
Yes, and I will say that the four that are serving on the policy committee, they are intelligent, informed, and passionate. There have been meetings where I was like, oh, this is going to be a short meeting. I even told Haley and Emily, like, this was going to be short. And 2 hours later, they're like really talking about what's happening in their, sometimes they're what's happening in their districts, but how these policies are going to impact the board, and really, talking about every little piece of it. So thank you to them. I don't think I'll take 60 minutes. You might take 60 minutes in your conversation, which is a great thing. I guarantee you I will not talk for 60 minutes straight. But in your policy or in the packet, and it starts on, the memo is on page 120 or page 122 if you download it, and if you have a computer like mine. That's but the memo goes through and talks about it. I know it's on page 120, so I suspect many of you didn't quite get there. So I'll give you a quick update or just of the 3 policies that we have been working on for the last couple of months, some more than others. Policy 3320 is about the policy committee, and this is the one that hopefully we are able to vote on tonight and make a change. The policy committee is the only committee of the OSBA board that starts in June. Not July 1, it starts on June 1. All of the other committees start in January. So, and Linnell actually flagged this for me, I don't know, probably a year ago, and was like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if they all were on the same start, so that when we make appointments, it's all the same, we don't forget anything. And so if you'll scroll down, if you can actually, page 124 or 126 is where the actual language is, and we can look right at it. Here we go. So here's the red is new, strikeout is what is currently in the policy but is being recommended for deletion. The opening paragraph, it looks like there's a bunch of changes, but it's really mainly a formatting change. If you ever look at the OSBA policies and you look through at the committees, it's hard to tell who's actually on the committee. It's in paragraph form. I think it's much easier if we just have it listed out 1, 2, 3, 4. These are those that serve on the committee. But there is a change in 2. Currently, it says at least 2 directors of the board, and currently there are 2. To my knowledge, there has never been more than 2 or 3 appointees. As it's been said many times, you are all very busy people. I don't know who said it, but busy people. Oh, it was OCCA. Busy people stay busy. So sometimes it's a struggle to find people to serve on committees. I don't see us ever really breaking that 5 threshold, but that was a recommendation for some of the committee members to say at least 2 and no more than 5 directors of the board. So that is the first change that would come. Well, the first change is the restructure for formatting. The second is to add at least 2, no more than 5. We also added listing the president as ex officio because that's what the bylaws say. So just as a reminder, and you'll see this when we bring all of section 3000 to the board, as we're going through the review, you'll see this consistent changes throughout in all of the policies. So it's easy to look and see, well, who's on this committee, and the president will be included. The footnote goes back to the bylaws so everyone can see. The next paragraph, paragraph 2 right here, it changes from June to January so that the appointments will take place starting in January. They remain 2-year terms, but it will just be consistent with everything else. We added a paragraph there, or a sentence there, just to clarify the president-elect and the president they're on their own cycle while they're in the president-elect and the president term. So it is still a 2-year term, but they follow the term of their office. They don't have a separate term or election or appointment to this committee. So those are the changes that the policy committee is recommending to the policy committee policy. Are there any questions, concerns, additional recommendations, anything that anyone has? Because Chris is prepared. So she said, if you'll talk, I'll answer all the questions. So, okay. If that's the case, I think we would be open for a motion to approve this one. I'm not trying to take your job, Sammy. But is there anyone who would like to make a motion? There's one in the packet, or we can walk you through it. We've got a microphone moving over here.
Happy to make the motion, but don't have the packet. I move that we accept the recommended changes as stated and presented. This policy number 3320, policy committee.
Awesome, thank you.
Lori Ganzuka, second.
Thank you. And any opposed? Seeing none, any abstentions? We're through one of the two that we're gonna talk about tonight. As an employee, I'm not eligible. So the next policy that we're going to talk about, and this is one that there's a mistake in my memo. So in the memo, I wrote that there's a sample motion. We're not anticipating that the board is ready to make a motion on the language here yet. This is just a little bit of background on, can we scroll down to policy 3200, executive committee. And if you're following along, it's on page 127 or 129 for the language. So, and actually, can we scroll down just a touch farther? There we go. So we can see all of the proposed language. So this is one of the issues or things that have been talked about at the governance committee level around potential bylaws change around specifically communication from the executive committee to the board. And in the governance committee, I'm not a part of the governance committee, but my understanding is that at the governance committee level, it was discussed and a recommendation was made that we can address this in policy, because if a change is made to the bylaws, that's quite a process in order to change that at any point in the future. Bylaws, as you know, as you're going to talk about a lot tomorrow, bylaws have to go before the membership of OSBA, everybody. Policy changes, though, it takes time. There's a lot of thought and effort that goes into that, but the board can make an adjustment to the policy. So if things need to be changed at some point. And so the changes to the second paragraph that you can see here is that the executive committee, any actions will be reported to the board of directors consistent with the seriousness and urgency of the matter and within 2 weeks if practicable. And I think the only exception might be if legal counsel was recommending some type of a pause or something in those situations, but really that the general expectation would be within 2 weeks. Additionally, executive committee actions will be reported at the next regular board meeting. Okay, so thinking about when that there will be a report coming, and then this final paragraph here is specifically if there is a complaint against the executive director, the executive committee would designate a representative to report out to the entire board via email as soon as possible. And then also if if they need to consult with an attorney, a member of the executive committee would consult OSBA's outside legal counsel and then follow counsel with respect to communicating out to the whole board. So we happy to have conversations about this, and I will jump to the third policy really quickly that we've been working on closely. Policy 7750, which is the whistleblower and non-retaliation policy. And so it looks a little bit more like your policy KL in your school districts, the way where we're getting it to a little bit more clear direction, what types of complaints go to who and who has a responsibility for all of those. But as we were talking about those, we kept coming back to this, and Emily and Haley were saying, well, and Chris, we're all saying, well, this is part of the conversations happening at the governance committee. So they all need to work together. We can't have different things in different places. But these are some of the real things so that if a complaint comes in, hopefully it's very clear what the process is going to be, and the board can be informed so that if the board needs to make a decision or if it's the executive committee, just so it's a clear delineation of responsibilities and steps there. So just to clean those up and make it simpler. So, yes.
If I'm not mistaken, you're saying that the board would be notified within 2 weeks.
So that is the proposed language.
That's the proposed language, and in an exigent circumstance, we should be notified before 2 weeks. They can call a special meeting. Because I'm speaking from life experience, I still have a 90-page investigation with very contradicting itself.
Yeah, so, and we, as a board, we can't talk about some of the things that have happened in the past because we're in open public session. We want to make sure that things remain protected by attorney-client privilege. If that's something that the board needs to discuss further, then those types of things would be arranged. But with this language, within 2 weeks, unless for some reason that's not advised by legal counsel, but at least within 2 weeks, the actions of the executive committee would be reported. And then if there was a complaint, it would be via email as soon as possible. And well, I suppose it's possible that the board votes and approves this tonight. That wasn't the intent. The intent was to have a conversation to figure out how the board is feeling on this. And then we can go back and we will come forward with more language in the future, more specific based on comments. And I hand here and Clyde has a microphone. So either way.
All right. Thank you. First, to Linda's comment, when you go through a policy review, I've actually done this before. It made me feel like I was back in law school. It was so much fun. Anyway, when you do this kind of review, what really happens is somebody has to make the move first. There's either a policy move, there's either a rule change, or depending on how you're setting up, and you mentioned it before, it would have to go before the whole body. So what I'm asking and what I'm suggesting is that you reframe all of the conflicts that you've seen, because some of those conflicts are not applicable here because they're as a result of an incident. All of this language makes complete and total sense by basis on what happens. This solves your problems, it takes down the barriers, everybody gets known up front. That's the goal here. So this will happen, then other reviews happen, and everything will then fall in line after. So if you're seeing things that appear to be contradictory, don't panic. You have to start someplace. Everybody's going to be, or every document that you're looking at in every level of that governance it may conflict until all of the levels are handled, but you can't do them all simultaneously. So you have to start someplace. So I just wanted to say that this is not a matter of there's something contradictory, when is that going to happen? It's just that you have to start first, right? And so this is a great start. My only concern is the second paragraph when we talk about seriousness and urgency of the matter. I have no doubt that you all thought long and hard on how to describe that. However, without a definition and specific examples of what seriousness and urgency is, could took us back to where we were before, where somebody thinks it's important, but other people don't. You don't want to give yourself that kind of wiggle room, right? If I'm do not get mad at me. If I'm the executive director and I'm doing something nefarious, I'm going to tell you when I think it's serious, and I'm never going to tell you. Okay, so that's where you've been. So where you want to go is so that you have some specific examples. I'm not saying you got to lay out the entire encyclopedia. I'm just saying that you might want to try to figure out how we can give just a little bit more substance to seriousness and urgency, because that is subject to debate and is subject to every opinion in here. So if we try to at least give some, they can be broad, but you got to start someplace. That was the only thing I was saying. Otherwise, awesome work, John. Awesome work.
Noted, we'll take that. Clyde was next.
All right, thank you for bringing this to our attention. As a military mindset, going through many situations in the military, The words as soon as possible is extremely vague.
Okay.
I would like to try to see something in there for like XYZ. X, you're gonna be notified at like 48 hours. Y, you're gonna be notified at like 72 hours. Z, we should have full conclusion of what's going on. 2 weeks, I believe, is a little too long if there's something serious going on.
Okay. Go ahead, Jackie.
The governance committee is presenting 3 bylaw changes, and this is the one. And I think that that the specific bylaw that this policy is going to go up against needs to be discussed first, actually, and then this policy. And then because that is our question also, is the urgency and as soon as possible. And that has caused issues of, quite frankly, trust and transparency and those issues. And so anyway, tomorrow that we have a second bite at that apple.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Absolutely. Once we have more, I guess, clarity, or once the board approves a recommendation on a bylaws change, that gives us a little bit of direction, but then we also have to wait for the board or the membership to approve those bylaws changes or vote on those bylaw changes. So we'll make sure that they line up, that they're, that they don't contradict. It is, taking different steps, but also being prepared so that once it's ready, we can move forward with that.
And I think that's why we are having this as a discussion right now versus asking the board to vote on it so that we can take this feedback. I do just want to go back to something that Spencer said in the beginning, which is having it in policy gives us the ability to make changes as necessary, and having it in the bylaws means that you have to wait an entire year to have any change happen, and it has to be approved by the whole membership. And so I think that is something that is important to consider, is this gives us, it has teeth and it gives us the ability to operate effectively, but it's not putting something else more restrictive into the bylaws that then it takes a long time to change if something were to happen that you needed to make that change.
You kind of said it really well, but I just want to, just set that tone. That the bylaws are kind of like the Constitution. You don't change them unless it's a very, very, very important reason. The policy, because it has to be voted on by the entire membership. The policy, the board can change, and we can make those decisions to suit what needs to happen. And so we can actually be more specific in policy if we choose to do that. And I would suggest just setting the stage that we think about that when we're discussing bylaws in the governance committee, of what the purpose of the bylaws are, and then what the purpose of policy is. So just not asking the board to make a decision on this tonight, but just setting that stage of how they need to be, how these documents need to function optimally.
Thank you.
One of the things that I might like to see in practice for this policy, because it sounds like we were hoping in the future of this policy to see a little more specific definition, is since we do support all of our member districts, I think there are some more specific examples that our member districts use as far as what they feel is emergency and the timeline for that. And I think the more that we can both be an example, but then mirror that example, as we know districts will then come to us looking for that guidance in the future, could be really helpful. And so I'd love to see some of the mirroring, if at all possible, of some districts that maybe have specific definitions already for some of this.
Thank you. Sorry, my hand is slower than you're talking right there. Thank you, great comments. Anything additional? Sammy?
I just want to say this conversation make my heart really happy that we're engaging in a conversation that gets us to really make sure we have solid, resilient policy that works. And one thing I'm hearing from this conversation is clarity around definitions, and maybe that expectation comes from that this policy assumes that as soon as a complaint is received and reported immediately to the president, president-elect, etc. And as soon as that's received to that person, then they consult with external legal counsel as soon as possible. Then the next step is, here's what you need to do to go for the next step, whether it's executive session or call for a meeting or report to the board. So I feel there's two things here. Number one is an expectation of immediate transparency. And I'm hearing that from folks that we need to enshrine in policy. But something that I think maybe have been spoken, but not explicitly, and I don't want to put words there, is that how can we train and how can we help those recipients of complaint to go through the next step? Like, don't sleep on it, contact legal counsel, make sure that you have access to legal counsel. And as soon as you get the counsel that this is your next step and this is how you do it, immediately do that. And I think that's maybe the expectation. And I'm wondering, is that policy or is that a procedure? Is that training? Is that all the above?
Yes, I mean, it's, if we talk about, and I do this with districts all the time, we talk about the purpose of policy, right? And sometimes the purpose is to give a step-by-step of what we need to do. Sometimes the purpose is just to meet the law. Sometimes the purpose is to communicate to various people based on what they are expected to do or what they can be expected to be done on their behalf. So this, along with policy 7750, which is your whistleblower and non-retaliation policy, there will be more guidance there. Okay, this is kind of a first step as a result of the governance committee conversations and the policy committee conversations. We worked closely or worked as a policy committee on the whistleblower language, looking at the legal counsel recommendations from earlier this year. And that will be coming to you soon, but we also have to see what's happening with the bylaws so that we don't have to bring it forth twice. So it's kind of like, you know, in your districts and ESCs and community colleges and everything, sometimes you get a policy update from OSBA, and then 3 months later, you get another one. And guess what? That's because the legislature passed something, and then ODE passed something, and then court case said something. And so trying to, and a lot of work is going, and you might look at this and be like, 2 policies, policy committee, way to go, you know, a whole year and 2 policies. But those are the things that we've been looking at and meeting and discussing to try to figure that out. So all of these conversations, all of these comments, thank you, thank you, thank you. This will help. And it will be followed up on and elaborated on, I think, in the governance committee bylaws conversations tomorrow. But this helps inform us of where we go next, what this language might look like, what does need to go in policy versus maybe we do create an internal procedure that is just kind of there, doesn't rise to the policy level, kind of an AR type thing for the OSBA policies, which we don't really have right now, but these are all great things. So if there's any other comments, I will take them. Otherwise, I will stop talking. Yes, Chris.
We do have 2 appointments to make tonight
that's right.
to the policy committee.
And just to explain, in your consent agenda, you approved appointments before you approved the change of the clock for the policy. Now you have the ability to bring the appointments to the same timeline. So you have in your packet the 2 appointments that we have made until May. Now you can extend them and I'll reappoint all the way until the end of the year 2025. And that's for the first one for Don Watson, the second one for Chris Howard. So with that, the recommendations in front of you for under agenda item 8. Is there a motion? Okay, let's do them one by one by name. Emily.
I move to appoint Don Watson to the policy committee to fill the vacancy from September 13th, 2024 through December 31, 2024.
Second was Lynn County.
Yeah. Sure, you want to.
Also, in addition, I move to appoint Chris Howitt to the policy committee to fill the vacancy from June 1, 2025 through December 31, 2025.
So on the motion to appoint Don Watson to policy committee to fill the vacancy from September 13th, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. We're gonna go next to the next one after we vote. Is there any objection? See, there's no objection. The motion passes. Congratulations, Don. Now, the next motion.
This might be a surprise. I move to appoint Chris Howitt to the policy committee to fill the vacancy from June 1, 2025 through December 31, 2025.
Second, Nancy Thomas.
It's been seconded by Nancy Thomas. Is there any discussion? Any objection on the motion to appoint Chris Howitt to the policy committee to fill the vacancy June 1st, 25 through December 31st, 25? See, there's no objection. The motion passes. Thank you. Do we have any further discussion or remarks about the policy that we have heard overall? Any feedback or any direction to the policy committee? Just want to say, how many times did we meet last year as a policy committee? I was the chair of the policy committee. I did not remember who were the members actually. We did not meet at all, right? Am I right? We did not. I don't remember meeting. We met this year how many times? And really, I want to acknowledge some important piece is Emily empowering staff to really provide us with the resources and the expertise, and it has been phenomenal. So really, thank you. Also, the input that each board member, not only through the policy committee, but also colleagues from the governance committee and the board have provided very valuable perspective that has been helping this committee move forward with recommendations. So thank you to all of you who have shared your inputs and thoughts. This product or these bricks that we're putting together are going to fit together to make this organization more resilient. So with that, we're going to move to the nomination and election of OSBA officers. There should be like lights and stuff right now. We got election. So I have few remarks to make about the election. Talk to your partner, your husband, your wife, your family. Make sure, ask yourself, are you sure you want to do it? And if you want to do it, it's fun. It's really rewarding. I mean it. It's very rewarding. It's very fulfilling. And I can't wait to see who are going to be stepping up to nominate themselves, or to be nominated. So just for context and for those who are want to review, as I go through the process of nomination here, the executive committee have approved a process for us to go through the nomination and election. Something new to you if you've been doing this for a while. If there is any contested seats, we used to wait until Sunday and we vote on Sunday or Saturday. We're going to do it all the same day tonight. So if there is only one nominee per position, we go for acclamation. If there's multiple nominees, we're going to go through the process and we're going to have the vote tonight. Okay, so that's one process that has been approved. We're going to go through tonight. The second thing, the president immediately goes to immediate past president, and that will be myself. Chris Cronin immediately, automatically by the end of the year, will transition from president-elect to president. So there's no elections there for that one. Now for that president-elect, we will ask for nomination tonight. The president-elect, once elected this year, okay, I'm gonna make it clear. The president-elect who we vote for next year will serve as president-elect in the next year, 2025. Will serve as president in 2026. Will serve as immediate past president in 2027. The vice president elects will serve for vice presidency next year. And also the secretary treasurer will serve for secretary treasurer next year. Any questions? So the process has been laid out on page 130. And do we have an order how we go about it? For the elects? Thank you. So the presiding officer opens the nomination. Nominations are now in order for the office of president-elects. Are there any nominations for the president-elect? Please raise your hand. Chrissy, who do you nominate?
Chrissy Wright, I would very proud to nominate Emily Smith for president-elect.
Emily Smith, I'm gonna ask you, are you sure 3 times? Do you accept?
Yes.
Is there any further nominations? Oh, there's a hand up, or Nicole Scott.
I don't think you need a second, but I second that nomination.
Thank you. Agreed and agreed. Is there any further nominations? For some weird reason, Robert's Rules of Order asked me to say, is there any further nominations one more time? Actually, 1/3 time, is there any further nominations? Then awkward silence. Since there's no further nominations, the nominations are now closed. So now we go for a vote by acclamation. All those in favor of appointing Emily Smith or electing Emily Smith to be the president-elect for the year 2025, say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. I want to say, I should not make this speech. You should make this speech. Any words?
I do not have a speech, but I'm excited. Thank you. It'll be a great 3 years.
I'm gonna make it very close one, short one. Emily, you rock. You're a wise person. You like to get work done, and I appreciate that in you. I appreciate your critical mind, and looking forward to see you in leadership, continuing to be in leadership. So thank you and congratulations. All right, next agenda item is nominating the vice president. The vice president serves as the chair of the LPC and other duties as mentioned in the bylaws. Is there any nominations for vice president? Neelam Gupta.
I would very enthusiastically like to nominate Don Watson.
Don Watson. 3 times, are you sure?
Yes, I am, and thank you very much.
Is there any further nominations? Is there any further nominations? One last time, is there any further nominations? Seeing there's no further nominations, the nominations now are closed. All those in favor of electing Don Watson to the position of vice president for 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Say nay if you are against. Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Congratulations. Speech. He said thank you. And again, same words about Dawn. She really asks questions and she knows how to ask questions. She has a really critical mind and she follows through with how can we make this organization better. I'm really inspired by the way that you really reach out to your region. And I believe this is a role model of engagement. Her region, if you don't know, they're very, very motivated. And she uses that to really get them even more engaged. And I cannot wait to see how you continue that work, not only for your region, but for the whole state. Congratulations.
And I just want to say, I don't think we've had a vice president who is as knowledgeable about our budget and finance. And so that's very exciting too.
Next item on the agenda is nominations for the position of Secretary Treasurer. Is there any nominations for the position of Secretary Treasurer? Christy?
I'd like to nominate Chrissy Wright for Secretary Treasurer.
Chrissy Rice, are you sure?
Walker second.
No need for a second, but appreciate it. Is there any further nominations for the position of secretary treasurer? Is there any further nominations? Is there any further nominations? See, there is no further nominations. Nominations are all closed. All of those in favor of electing Chrissy Wrights, Chrissy Wrights to the position secretary treasurer 2025, say aye. Aye. All those against, say nay. Any abstentions? Passed unanimously. Congratulations. Congratulations, welcome to the team. I look forward to working with you at the executive committee next year. And as a matter of a really transition, I did share with Don, and actually for all board members, that I would really recommend and support if you would be able, time permitting, to attend our executive committee meetings. It does not count toward quorum, and if there's any executive session, you may not attend it unless probably there might be ways to do it. However, you can't participate in discussion. However, being appraised of those discussions will really help with smooth transition, and I would like to encourage continuing that. So I would encourage you to do that. And for all board members, executive committee meetings are posted, and you're welcome always to join if you have any questions about topics that the executive committee discuss. Do we have anything else on the nominations, or we're done with that? We need a recess? Like for the night? All right. So one last thing before we go for recess. They're gonna lock the room, but I would say take any items that you may need overnight, or take all your belongings. So if you need them, you have them. We will be meeting again at 9 a.m. And as mentioned, we have planned time to connect with each other and with each other's families. So please share that with them, and we'd love to connect with all of you. If there's nothing for the good of the order, without objection, the meeting will go into a recess until 9 a.m. on Saturday, September 14th. We are in recess.